I'm here with Carly today from Merrifield, so she's looking all very corporate, same as me today. It's great and a little bit more relaxed than last time when we had Lindsay from ANZ when I was wearing a shirt and probably putting people off. Carly, thanks for coming in today
No
and helping out the wide world of the amazing people who just want to know everything about commercial leasing. So we were talking before about... What was it? We were talking about so many different things, but we were talking mainly about leases and responsibilities and all of that sort of stuff. So can we just kick off with that and just get that clear about what the differences are?
So the biggest thing with commercial real estate compared to residential is that residential is very black and white. So we see that there's an act and it says this is what the landlord will do, this is what the tenant will do. Commercial, it's all about the lease. So it's about negotiating the terms at the start of the lease. What will the landlord be responsible for? What will be the tenant responsible for? When you see a lease, in the contents page it'll say landlord's responsibilities and tenant's responsibilities, and it's different for every lease. It's very general, same themes, but it's not bound by an act what exactly the landlord and tenant have to do.
Okay, so it comes down to negotiation.
And most of the questions today, everything comes down to the negotiations at the very start of the leasing process, and that's why it's really important, especially first-time tenants, is to read and fully understand the offer to lease and the lease, because you can't change it. You can change it, but it's hard to change things in 2 years or 1 year or 3 months ago. Oh, actually, I didn't understand it. So it's just about getting the lease and the terms right at the very start.
Okay, so if I'm a new tenant and a new business, like most businesses are, you're going to look at a new premises after you've left here, obviously, because we're the incubator and out to the real world. But after that, and I'm not really good at negotiations and I don't know what I'm looking for. Now, I can ask you, for example, but your responsibility is to the owner of the property and to get the best deal for the owner, obviously. And you want it amicable, definitely, as the commercial leasing expert. But that's where your responsibilities lie. How do I, as a tenant, go, damn, I really need to know all of this stuff, but I don't know it. What do I do? Do you just kind of muddle through? Or?
So you've got to ask questions and you've got to read the document. That's like the biggest thing that I'm seeing now with electronic signing is that people aren't reading everything, because everything you need to know will be in the offer to lease or the draft lease.
Gotcha.
But asking, whilst I am responsible to the landlord, you just got to ask questions of any agent. We also can't be dishonest.
No, that's
so
true,
you've got to ask the questions and not just sit back. Make sure you ask, clarify. Ask questions like, is the rent negotiable? Is there incentives in place? So when you're leasing a commercial property, it's very much an offer and acceptance, kind of like buying the home.
Okay, gotcha.
So it's, you put an offer to all the terms and you put everything you want in that. And then you go back and forth with the landlord. That's like how you purchase a home. When you do a residential lease, it's an application, it's take it as is normally. So you've got to just be, understand it's your only option to negotiate is at that very first stage. So
if I see a broken drain pipe and I go, there's a broken drain pipe there, I want it put into my lease that's going to be fixed. You put that in. But if it isn't put in there, then it goes, you've got to drag down the track of now somebody's got to fix it and you've got to talk to them, but we'll get to that in a minute. But it's best to put it in up front, so it's done, it's clear.
So I always say to tenants, go for everything you want, because all the landlord can say is no. That's the worst case scenario. So you try for the best terms that suit you, and like an agent's not going to say no. We have a responsibility to take your offer to the landlord as it is. So we have a legal requirement to present any offer to the landlord as it is. We don't get to filter that. So as a tenant, you just need to go for what you want.
Okay, so put in the 50 things that you want and hope for 50, but
what's going to happen?
What's the worst thing, right?
You might, if you put 50, you might get the owner off guard, and they might not want to work with you because it's too cumbersome.
Of
But
course.
you know, yeah, go for the whatever you want.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
That has made a lot of sense
Yeah.
to me, and I'm guessing it's made a lot of sense for a lot of people as well who are,
Yeah.
who are going to be watching this. Okay, so we've got some questions. Thank you very much for people who sent through questions. I'm going to start from the top.
Yep.
We might have covered just now in that bit,
Yep.
but let's really go for it today. Okay, right. So what's the process in putting in an application and securing the property, and what kind of time frames would I look at?
So this one is we just touched on that we don't put applications and we put offer to leases in.
Yep.
So the process would be that you'd get in touch with your agent or your landlord, depending on if there's a managing agent involved.
Yeah.
You generally, an agent will draft it for you,
Yep.
and it will have all the conditions, terms, how long you want to lease it for, what price you would want to pay, do you need works done, who's going to do this maintenance, and you know that's where you break down. This is what the landlord's going to do. This is what the tenant's going to do in that offer.
Yeah.
And yeah, you write any special conditions, and that would be I want this repaired or that done before I start.
Yeah, I need an internal wall built,
Yep.
and I don't want to pay for that, so I'm going to
Yep.
ask the landlord to pay
Yep.
for it.
That's exactly what. Yep,
Yeah,
special
absolutely.
condition.
Yeah.
Yep. If you've got an agent involved, we'll draft it. You'll review it, and this is the critical step of reviewing it,
Yeah.
and really reading the whole document, because once that's accepted, it does commit you to a lease.
Yeah.
So where you would draft it, the new tenant would review it
Yeah.
carefully, reading every
Carefully.
single word.
And it'll be in nice legalese so people can.
It's
yeah. A little bit.
It is easy to read.
Yeah.
It's about 8 pages, but only 4
Okay.
or 5 pages of text. It is easy to read, but you just got to do it, and lots of people aren't doing it
So
at the
make
moment.
sure that you haven't got the kids or the dog or anything
give yourself
harassing
time.
you, and just
Yeah.
really knuckle
Yeah.
down just the 8 pages, which is going to take you half an hour to read.
Yeah.
Just make sure you read it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and that's in the time frames, like take 24 hours
Yeah.
to read it properly and understand what you're signing. And then the time frame of getting it really depends on the owner. So the owner could be a farmer that only comes into town, comes in at 6.
Yeah.
It could be someone that lives in eastern states. There's no hard and fast time frame.
Okay.
It could be that generally they have people to talk to, so it might be 48 hours. Normally the agent will let you know.
Okay.
The owner's hard to get hold of.
Yeah.
Or the owner's on holidays, so you're not going to hear back in for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
But generally the process is, if the owner is motivated, it would be back and forth for a couple of days, you would say. But you then wouldn't start the lease. It's not something where you would apply one day and begin by Friday.
Yeah,
It would
that's
be probably a month later.
Yeah, because it might be lease or there might be stuff that needs doing, and you've got all
that's
that time
right.
to.
And you've got to negotiate a lease.
Yeah.
So
Cool.
yeah.
Okay, we touched on this a bit earlier as well. What are the agent's responsibilities? What is the landlord's responsibility? And what's the tenant's responsibilities? Now, you said that's all down to the negotiation and the contract. Absolutely. So that would be nice and clear then of what your responsibilities are and what the landlord's responsibilities are. And I'm guessing, I'm not an agent, but as an agent's point of view, your responsibility is to obviously to the owner, because they're employing you to do that, but you need everything to run smoothly, so you need to tread that line quite carefully.
So our role is that once you've agreed on the lease, is that we will execute that lease. So we will make sure that the lease terms are met. So, paying your rent and things like that. But obviously you could be a tenant for 15 years. So we want to really have a good relationship with you as the tenant. So it's not, black and white. We want to make sure we'll be there to help you, because especially new time tenants, it is hard to interpret sometimes your lease. So you can ring up and you can go, oh, look, this is broken. What do I do here? And we can say, look, go to your lease, repairs and maintenance. It does specify the fixtures and fittings are your responsibility. So we're there to help, because we want you to stay at the property, because that's the best thing for the landlord.
Yeah, that's right. And also, to be honest, it makes your life a little bit easier, because then you're not having to chase around and your people and your contracts and absolutely.
And that's another difference with commercial to residential. I have people that I've been at Merrifield 12 years and I've been a tenant for those 12 years. So if you're not willing to work with people in year one, you don't turn them over every year, they're still there in 12 years. So it's not all the landlord's way.
No.
It's about trying to help the tenant and keep a long-term relationship going. Yeah.
Perfect. I can tick that one off then. What information should I provide in an application if I've never leased before or just started a new business?
So this is something that I come across a lot in the first time. You've got to show the landlord that you have the resources to pay for the lease for the term of the lease.
Okay.
So it's very easy when you've leased before and you can show rental evidence, or you can show a good credit history. But when it's your first time, you've got to show something. So we would normally ask for an assets and liabilities, so you can show the owner, look, I haven't leased before, but I have had a mortgage for 15 years and I've been able to pay that off.
Okay.
And character references, if you've got no creditor information, you've got to do whatever. It could be bank account statements to show, look, I might be new starting off my business, but I'm not living week to week.
So it comes down to it, and I did discuss this with Lindsay last week about getting a loan. Give as much information as possible. Would you lend somebody, in Lindsay's case it was, would you lend somebody your money without any references or without any information? It's exactly the same thing to you. Would you let somebody just move into a property of yours and you don't know anything about them? And can they pay it? Provide all that information.
And if you're a startup business, prep a letter and because most of my landlords are normal everyday people, and so if you can actually show them, look, this is the vision, it's not something I've thought up overnight, I've done a business plan, I've seen business plans being used, people want to see, okay, you might be new, but you've thought about it, you've got your money saved. I think working capital is important, especially if it's something that that's not going to open the doors and instantly make money. It's about making sure that they're comfortable. And they're like, I'm willing to give it a go. Because everyone has to start somewhere.
That's right.
And there's lots of landlords willing to do it if you are organised and you can show you put the time and effort into.
Makes it easy when somebody comes from us and they've been in the incubator space, and we can go, well, yes, here's the rent and here's the lease. So remember that, and we do have an office vacant at the moment. Not that I'm blatantly promoting we've got an office vacant, but we've got one.
But it is it's rental reference. That's rental history. So if we can ring up and say, look, did this tenant meet all their monthly rent payments and were they easy to deal with? Because that's another important thing. Like if you are not easy to deal with and creditors or people that you deal with say, oh, look, they're rude or they don't answer my calls or I can never get hold of them or they don't answer, that's
that's
a red flag.
It makes it difficult to deal with somebody and work with somebody.
That's right.
Absolutely. Okay, this one's a good one because I like this one. I hear about things like 2 + 2, and what does that mean?
So 2 + 2 means the first term of the lease is 2 years. Then after my 2 years are up, I've got an option for another 2.
Right, gotcha.
So it's really important. An option is a tenant's option. So it means after the 2 years, the landlord cannot refuse your second option, provided you let them know in the appropriate time frame. So normally it depends on every lease, but normally that's 3 months. So 3 months before your first 2 year option's up, you've got to go to them and say, yes, I want to execute my option.
So you want to extend the option. I'm nearly at 2 years. I want to extend it for another 2. And
you cannot be in default. So you can't be late on your rent or have any sort of breach. And keep your option. So you've got to make sure, we would normally go 4 to 5 months out from the lease. We'd be like, look, you've got an option coming up, you need to let us know in this time frame. If you are not in default and you reply in the right time frame, then you've got that guaranteed 2 years. This is something that comes up a bit. It's again, we're coming back to negotiating at the first point.
Of course.
You can't go in your 2 years and then go, I've got an option for 2, but I only want 1.
No.
That doesn't guarantee that. You've got to whatever you start with at the lease. You can negotiate anything at any time. But once you open that door, the landlord then can negotiate. They might go, okay, we didn't agree on that. I'm going to negotiate on rent or on
and
other
that's the key,
conditions.
right? So with the 2+2, so you've got the two years which you paid the one lot of rent for, because that's agreed, and that's the rent for 2 years. Should be, maybe, but not in these times.
Yeah.
And then it comes to the +2. Well, that's the time when the owner can say, okay, well, look, the market's gone to pot.
No,
Can we help, or?
Generally, you get a rent review every year in commercial. So even on your 2 years, you'll have a rent review after your first year, and that's another thing you negotiate on how that rent is reviewed.
Yep.
So it could be on the CPI.
Mm-hmm.
That was always very, very popular.
Oh, absolutely, because it was like 2%. That was fantastic.
At the time, it was under 1%.
Yeah.
And so, but doing a CPI, it is meant to be fair. That was reflective of the economy,
That's
and
right.
now the CPI is higher, and that's reflective of the economy as well. So it is a fair way of doing it, because it reflects the landlord's expenses, the tenant's expenses, but it's obviously not very popular at the moment.
So my suggestion, my suggestion is don't negotiate on CPI at the moment, and just kind of wait for a little bit for it to drop, and then when you go to commercial lease, negotiate it to CPI.
And so you can also do a market review, which is based on market evidence. Fixed, you can do combinations. You can stage it, so you can go, look, I'm going to pay 20 grand this year, 22 next, 24.
Yeah.
So that's what I do see a little bit of confusion there. Like if I look in for 2 years, people say, I thought that's my rent was at for 2 years.
Yeah,
It's like, no, you've got the property secured for 2 years, but you're generally going to have a rent increase.
So remember that 2-year lease, for example, does not necessarily mean that it's 2 years worth of rent. Like, that can change. I mean, there could be an option where somebody actually writes it into a contract and goes, okay, so I'm going to charge you, let's say, $1,000 a month, and I'm going to hold that for 2 years. And then they're bound to that.
And so again, it's another thing like why it's so important to negotiate everything at the start. So
that, I mean, the owner could ask for that, but for the tenant, that would be perfect. Then you know where you're at. You could go, well, here's the situation. And the owner might just go, yeah, you know what, that's fair.
And that's why some tenants prefer fixed rent increases. So it might be a fixed 3% or a fixed amount, because it's just so much easier for budgeting. So at the moment, like if you entered a lease and you were thinking, CPI runs 2.5 to 3, normal economy, and now suddenly it's 8. You didn't budget for that, and that affects your cash flows and things like that. So,
of course.
And you can guarantee if the CPI's at 8%, all the rest of your expenses have increased. So it's a bit harder to budget.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so next question. Are there any legal requirements that landlords have to complete prior to leasing a property?
So...
Oh, that's a big question.
There is. We talked about the fact that there isn't, the Residential Tenancies Act, there's an act, it's very clear, yes or no. There is an act for commercial, it's for retailers, and there is some legal requirements in there that are in regards to what a landlord can charge you, how long they have to offer you. But on a normal commercial lease, there is some WorkSafe things. It's very, that are, electrical safety certificates, making sure that everything is up to standard electrical wise, asbestos registers, but there's nothing in terms of like a residential tenancy where they have to have this cleaned or that cleaned or anything like that. It's how you view it, provided that they've got a safety certificate, asbestos register if applicable. There's a very grey area with WorkSafe at the moment. There's been some huge changes and it's with WorkSafe, it's never black and white because it really depends on the use of the property and what you're going to use it for. That affects like fire safety and things like that. So it's a bit of a case by case. Normally we like to have our landlords have it, it's for the current use, it's compliant, and now you have to keep it compliant.
Absolutely.
So they get it to here, and then as time goes by, if the laws change and you need to test RCVs more often, if you need to get safety, you would do that as a tenant.
You would do that as a tenant. Okay. Okay. And that makes a lot of sense. So essentially the landlord's responsibility is it's got to be a safe building. As in structure, plumbing, electrical, so it's got to be safe.
Yeah, that's correct.
And if you do anything outside of that which
Yeah.
alters that, well, that's on you.
So there's always a condition in a lease that says a tenant needs to abide by all government regulations.
Absolutely.
So if they change,
Yeah.
if the City of Albany come in and say you're not meeting health codes, you don't go back to the landlord and say, look, I haven't got the right stainless steel. That would be your responsibility.
Yeah.
So you, as a tenant, have to be very aware of all government regulations.
And that comes into that negotiation at the start, making sure that that is up to date and that is the latest regulations. And then from then on, if anything changes, that's down to you, the tenant.
Or if you change the use of the building.
Did that make sense? It's a little bit confusing, but we got through it for you. All right. Now, if the property is too big for me, can I sublease? And I think this has come because there's some bigger properties which are for lease in Albany and also in the Great Southern, and there's a lot of small businesses. So they're looking at it going, well, that's great. I need some space. So I know we've had somebody move out of here recently, and they've gone into a bigger property, which is the right size for them. But they were looking at a lot bigger and going, it's just too big. I don't need all this space. I'm paying for this and I can't really afford that. Is there a way that...
So again, negotiation at the start. So most leases allow for subleasing with the approval of the landlord. So one thing that's really important is that they can't deny that without good reason, but they've got to be a sound financial business. But
so if you're an accountant, for example, and you want this space, you can't exactly rent it out as a brothel on the side.
No, that would be a problem.
But if you were an accountant and you had like a bookkeeper or an architect maybe,
and they had the financials and were reputable as well. So, because the thing is, if you sublease it, you're still responsible for that rent. So you can't come to the landlord and say, oh, I sublet half, and now they won't pay their rent, and they're damaging the property. You're up for it, so you've got to be careful who you sublease it to. But it is quite common. But I would never recommend someone take on a big property
just
buying on hoping to sublease it, because if you've got no security, if they do the wrong thing by you, you can't come back to the landlord and say, I can't afford it now because my subtenant isn't paying, or my subtenant's moved out and I can't find a new one. So I would really not recommend it.
I'm with you as well. I mean, you could say there's a shop space, for example, and you've got all this shop and there's another bit of the shop which you could potentially sublease. As long as you could afford the whole lease, it might be an option for you to claw a little bit of money back for a period of time. So just be aware, guys, that subleasing you could do, but you've got to, again, it's right at the beginning of the contract. You've got to negotiate that in, but you're responsible ultimately. Okay. If there is damage to the property, who's responsible for it? So just kind of quick breakdown in differences of responsibility.
So
the roof comes off in a storm.
Okay, so structural. Generally the landlord. So if the roof, that's going to be an insurance claim. The landlord's going to be responsible. So you're going to call your agent saying we had a storm, my roof's come off. If you run your forklift through the warehouse and damage the property, you're responsible.
It's your fault. You're an idiot.
But if a member of the public runs through your front windows and only damages the windows, generally tenants are responsible for plate glass insurance, so that would be your insurance policy. It's a very broad question on damage, but generally structural is the owner and everything else is the tenant.
Okay, and it's an interesting thing you say about the glass, because a lot of people don't realise that glass is the responsibility of the tenant. And you can get glass insurance from your insurance company. I would suggest, and I always suggest, yes, you can look at your own insurances around the place, but talk to somebody like an insurance broker. Because they can deal with everything for you to do, your public liability, your indemnity insurance, and they'll talk to you about things like plate glass insurance, which is an important one.
We've seen a couple of tenants get caught out because they pay building insurance in their outgoings, and they think, oh well, it's covered, but you've still got to get your contents, your own public liability, and your plate glass on a separate policy.
Absolutely. So be aware of that one. Okay, we've only got a couple of questions left, and nobody has put up a question yet. So if you want to, just put up a question. How long is a reasonable time to fix issues? Now we all know there's tradespeople issues and all that sort of stuff, but how long is really
It
realistically?
really depends on what the issue is and how serious it
I've
is.
got a leaky roof.
If you've got a leaky roof,
Now it's into winter.
yeah. So the main thing is like you're never going to get that fixed while it's still raining.
No, that's true.
So that's where you've got to, as a tenant, you've got a responsibility to mitigate damage.
Yeah.
So you can't just let it pour out and damage the property further. So you've got to get your buckets or do whatever you need to do in the short term.
Yeah.
Generally, a roof leak, the owner doesn't want to leave that too long because that's going to.
That's right. It's going to damage the place.
Yeah, but it really depends. Tradies, like for an urgent matter like that, you would hope within 48, 72 hours.
Yeah.
But what we find is if there's been a storm and got a
Everyone's
roof leak,
yeah.
it might be a week. And the tradies just have to decide urgency.
Yeah, of course.
But if it's something that's not urgent, with tradies now, like it could be 2 weeks, it could be a month.
Look, absolutely. I think the question has come from somebody who might have had this problem. And there's a big difference. If it's a structure thing like a roof leak, that's the landlord's responsibility. So they phone you and they go, okay, it's all in hand, but you're still waiting and you're still waiting. Whereas if it was me doing it, I'd be on the phone going, and this person, I need to get it fixed quickly because it needs to be done. You guys don't have time to be sitting there for everybody going, and this person,
Yeah.
then you've got your list of people. And I guess that's where it's coming from.
It's coming from, lots of people have private landlords who want to do things themselves or they want their mates to do it. And, it can take a long time. And we have the same problem. So we might ring the landlord and say, right, we've got a roof leak. We can get our tradie there today. Yeah. And they'll go, no. I want to deal with my brother. Yeah. But my brother's away for 2 weeks. And then, that's the landlord's choice, and so then you've got to wait.
So what would happen, like in a case like that, because that's rather interesting that somebody might do that. If you could get a tradesperson the next day and the landlord's decided, no, I can't do it, but they can't get it for 2 weeks. And now there's damage happening to stock and whatever property is of the tenant. Who's responsible for that? Because you say, obviously, that's the tenant's responsibility. Yeah. It's arisen because of the landlord's issue.
No, that would always, if it was a roof leak, would have to be, the landlord to fix it. Sometimes I think practicality-wise, if it's really impacting my business and I could get someone there for $100 to do a small leak. If I was a tenant, I would just do it. I wouldn't waste my time ringing up. Unfortunately, it's a reward for the landlord because then they don't have to do it.
That's right.
You can't fix it and then invoice the landlord, unfortunately.
Damn it, why not?
Well, and some landlords might go, you know what, beauty. Yeah. But if they've specifically told the agent, I want to do it from myself, then they're probably not going to pay the bill. Yeah. But you've got to weigh up what's important. Like if you've got stock getting damaged, you've got to then put an insurance claim in. Yeah. And if you could get it fixed for $100 or $500,
get it done for $100 and you've got your excess is $500, you may as well just get it done. Yeah. Absolutely.
But you've got to get it done by a proper tradie as well.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or phone you and say, hey, look, I can get somebody to do it. Do you want to say to the landlord, I can get it done so he doesn't have to worry about it and he'll pay.
Make it easy for the landlord.
Will he pay it and we'll just work something out on the back end.
Exactly.
It could be off rent, it could be whatever.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Okay, what happens if something what happens if something happens and I have to close my business?
So this is a big one.
Yeah.
Lots of, at the end of the day, a lease, it's a deed, it's a contract.
Yeah.
And once you've signed a contract with the landlord, you have an obligation to fulfill it.
Mm-hmm.
So if something happens and you have to close your business, you've got to keep paying rent until the day. So in residential terms, we talk break lease.
Yeah.
In commercial, we talk assignment. So you've got to find someone else to take over your term of your lease.
Break a lease, right? It's a break of lease. Yeah.
It's someone, you don't break your lease, someone else takes over your lease.
That's right, yeah.
So they actually continue with your lease terms as if they were you. Okay. And again, it's like subleasing, it's got to be on par to you. Yeah. So you can't, if you've gone in, you had a great financial background, you were doing really well, and then you have to shut for some reason, you can't then go, but I've found, 18-year-old that's got no, and
yeah.
I
So
want
you're
them
an
to take
accountant,
on.
but as you said, there's somebody who's doing hairdressing. It's not.
It could be a different use, but they've got to be financially stable and they've got to be able to afford it. So so the landlord has to be confident that they can meet the obligations of your lease.
Yeah.
Like everything, if there's a really unfortunate scenario happen, say, there's something to say you can't go to the landlord and go, look, there's been a death or there's been something that's really horrible that's happened.
Yeah.
A landlord could decide, hey, right, no problems. But 99% of the time, they're going to want, they might rely on that income.
Yeah.
So they might have mortgages and things like that. And so even at the end of tenancy, they have 3-4 months to know that it's going to be vacant. You kind of can't land on them and say, look, I need to stop paying my rent.
Yeah.
It's something you've got to be very careful with.
Yeah.
That if you sign a 3-year lease, you're confident you can.
Yeah, you're locked in for those 3 years.
Because if the rental market changes and you can't find anyone to sign the lease, you could pay. You could have something happen in the first year. You could be paying for 2 more.
I mean, we're lucky in this market. If something did happen, there's a lot of tenants around, a lot of movement around. So potentially that wouldn't be as bad. But you just never know.
Yeah,
you just never know. So if you sign a lease for 2-3 years, make sure that you are in it for 2 or 3 years. There's nothing else you can do about it. Sorry, guys. All right, I've got a final question here. Came in this morning, so here we go. What are variable outgoings and what costs are usually met by the leaseor and what are met by the owner?
I've answered this. This is the question that everybody asks because people you see in the paper rent be 20 grand plus VOs.
Yeah.
And if you haven't leased before, no one.
Yeah, nobody knows
what is that?
My rent's 20 grand. You've just said it's 20 grand.
Yeah. And people get it confused with utilities.
Yeah. Okay.
So variable outgoings are everything that it costs the landlord to own the property.
Yeah.
So the general ones are City of Albany rates, water rates, land tax, building insurance on a commercial lease, management fees.
Yeah.
You could do general maintenance. So if the landlord wants to ensure that the air conditioning maintenance is done when they want it done, it could be included in the outgoings.
Right.
Rubbish, it could be included if it's shared. Gutter cleaning could be included. It's very much, again, at that offer and acceptance, there's a table.
Okay.
These are the things that are going to be included in the outgoings. But generally if you see a property and you're like, oh, I really like that, you ask the agent for the outgoings budget and then you'll see. So then, you probably do it before you even see the property so you can know, I'm going to see a property that's 20 grand. If the outgoings are 10, that's not in my budget.
That's right.
You're
it's 30 grand, not 20 grand.
Yeah. And so it's different landlords have different things they charge. Some don't charge everything they could.
Yeah.
And some landlords charge everything. And now this is one of the big differences with commercial leasing to retail. Retailers, there's certain things they cannot charge, like management fees can't be charged to a tenant. But generally those first 5, City of Albany, water, building, insurance, land tax, management fees.
Okay, so it's make sure you read that and do not trust when an agent says that this is the rent because it isn't the rent, because it is the rent, but then there's the variations which are on top of it. So that one number you look at, that's not necessarily the full story. And
they change each year.
Yeah.
So agents normally estimate what the outgoings are going to be, then they'll audit them at 30th of June. Yeah. But as we've seen, insurance, everything's got. So sometimes you actually, and if they do go up during that year, you get an invoice.
Yeah.
But if you've overpaid it, if we've said they're going to be 10 grand, but they're only 8, you get your 2 grand back. But it is something that's completely out of the control of the agent and the owner. Yeah. And sometimes it happens. But always, ask for the outgoings at the very beginning, and you can see exactly what they are. So my advice, as I always say to people if they're going for a lease, look at what the lease is, build a lovely little spreadsheet for yourself, which says the total amount which you can pay on the top, and it's your own information, get the rent, how much all the variations are, put in all your utilities and all that sort of stuff and just see what that bottom number is going to be. It doesn't have to be difficult, just make it really, really simple so you can read it. But the agent here
can give you all that information, and that's really important.
And it's just really important to remember that utilities are different to outgoings.
Absolutely.
So water consumption is normally an outgoing.
Yeah.
But electricity, and if the property has gas, that would not be included.
Yeah. Wi-Fi.
The
all
other
that
thing,
stuff.
all your phone and internet. The other big thing is like rubbish collection.
Yeah.
Commercial properties, the council doesn't come and pick your bin up.
No.
So you've got to pay. So you've got to make sure you go to a contractor and get that included. You've got to remember you've got to keep the property in a good condition. Yeah. So if you've got split air conditioning, you've got to get them serviced and filters cleaned. And if you've got any other mechanical, you've got to show that you're, like if you've got an electric roller door, say, in a commercial property, you've got to keep that service. So they're all the things people... So some landlords will say, we'll organise it and charge you each month. Other landlords say, no, you organise that with your contractor and you pay. Yeah. And they're the things that sometimes people get caught with because they've thought, oh, this is the outgoings that the owner's charging me, that's all there is.
Yeah, that's right.
But you've still got to manage your business. Yeah.
So ultimately, it's negotiate at the start of the contract.
Yep.
Read the contract like crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure you understand that contract.
Yep.
Your variable outgoings.
Yep.
And then negotiate properly.
Yep.
Talk to the agent because they're lovely.
Yes.
Contrary to popular belief with real estate people, you're lovely.
Yes.
So that's great. And that's your legal requirements. Your legal requirements are that you are responsible essentially for that whole building. Not structurally, obviously, because unless you negotiate some structural changes and that sort of stuff. But you are responsible for everything. It is your building.
And seek advice, there's obviously
us,
you,
people can harass you.
Yes, of course. Because sometimes there's no agent. Like sometimes landlords do it themselves, and that's a tricky situation because there's no one explaining things in the middle. So there's all speak to other tenants. Everyone knows someone that's commercially leasing. They're going to have experience. Come and see you. There's guides on small business leasing. There's so many places.
You can go down a rabbit warren though. So just keep it easy. Just give us a call. Just give us a call. We'll try and if not, we'll get the
refer
information.
To the next person.
We'll refer for you and go. Well, this is the person you really need to speak to. Carly, this has been fantastic. It's got to be difficult for you, especially if people are trying to lease commercially privately. Hey, that's got to be really difficult because. That's a minefield. I can understand it more on a residential side because it's kind of clear cut. Here's all the paperwork and you've got to follow this stuff. But commercial leasing, it isn't. So I'm going to recommend now, if you've got a commercial property and you're looking to lease it out, go through an agent. Don't do it yourself. It's too much to do, too much to worry about.
Yep, definitely, absolutely.
And you can give Carly a call at any time at Merrifield, and she's got properties there for lease and that sort of stuff.
Well, it's a pretty tough market, I think, and I'm sure you're probably having problems where people can't go from here into the next one.
But
they come up. You've got to get on people's registers.
Absolutely.
Make contact. Don't wait because sometimes they're getting sold without getting leased. Without going to market at the moment. Okay. So you need to register your interest. So
you've got a list of people already waiting for a certain size property. You go, well, this one's come up, so don't even have to advertise it.
Exactly.
That's nice for you.
Yeah, it's not nice for the everyday, tenant who's waiting on something to come online.
And that's why I keep getting phone calls from companies, larger companies, going, can we come in here? No, sorry, you can't, because we're a business incubator. So if you're a new business, give us a call and we might be able to work something out, but if not, go to somebody like Carly. But Carly, thank you so much for today. This has been awesome. Guys, I hope it's helped you guys a lot. As always, any questions, and hope that helps.